Good morning, I'm Elma McMenemy, a Blue Badge qualified Scottish tourist guide, and today I'm going to take you to explore Glenesk and Loch Lee. Loch Lee and the upper part of Glenesk are in the Cairngorms National Park. That's Britain's largest national park at about 1,750 square miles. That's twice the size of England's Lake District National Park. The River North Esk, which flows through Glenesk, forms a border between present-day Aberdeenshire and Angus. First, we're going to have a look at the Rocks of Solitude, part of Scotland's Highland boundary fault. The cliff towering above this path is on the north side of the River North Esk. The path comes out to give you a view of where the river flows between two walls of rock cliffs, known as the Rocks of Solitude. In picturesque Glenesk, also known as the glen or valley of the rowan trees. Glenesk is seen as being very remote, but it's still a thriving community, mostly agriculture and also shooting and stalking. The scenery changes constantly as you walk or drive up the glen. Lots of woodland, which you can see behind me. Not only rowans, which we will see later, but also birch trees. And then suddenly the vista opens up to show you the amazing hills of the lower Grampian Mountains. In Scottish folklore, rowan trees like these in the foreground, sometimes called the mountain ash, are meant to provide shelter for benevolent spirits. And so, for hundreds of years, people believed that the rowan could give them protection from witches. It became commonplace to plant rowan trees on either side of the entrance to a house to help protect the inhabitants from the actions of witches and their spells. That still happens in many places today, and you can still see them at the entrances to houses. The building you can see behind me is called the Retreat. Originally it was a small cottage used by a retired naval captain, Captain Weems, as his retreat after retiral from the sea. Today, the Retreat is based on an old shooting lodge built for the landowners, and it houses the Glenesk Folk Museum. That's closed at the moment due to the COVID pandemic, but also for reconstruction. The view from the Retreat's car park is also rather beautiful. Today, Tarfside is the Glen's main community centre of village life in times gone past, and even in recent times, was this building, the Masonic Hall. We'll walk the rest of the way to Loch Lee from here in Vermark, the place where the water of Mark flows into the River North Esk. It's about a mile from here to the old kirk on the shores of the loch. This is Invermark Castle. It was built almost 500 years ago, at a time when cattle rustling was great in the glen. The cattle rustlers, known as Cateran, came across the mountains from Deeside to steal the local cattle, and so the landowners built tower houses, castles like these, to defend their property. Sadly, today it's fallen into disrepair. This part of the river, the water of Mark, is known locally as the Monk's Pool. You can find out why if you watch the longer video. There's a huge expanse of the loch. It runs roughly east to west. We're looking west at the moment. These video clips were made on the same day, just a few hours apart. It shows just how quickly the weather can change here, and when the wind blows there can be huge waves on the loch. In the winter, the sun may not rise above that hill. At the east end is the place where the church was built, although today sadly only a ruin remains. On the hillside behind the old church stood the schoolhouse, the parish school. For much of the 1700s, the schoolmaster was a man called Alexander Ross, a native of Deeside. He was also the kirk's precentor and session clerk, and a poet published in his own lifetime. In the 1700s, life in the glen could be very harsh, particularly here at the western end. The loch is roughly 900 feet above sea level. Very little of the land could be cultivated. Arable land and pasture was in very short supply. It was a hard life. They raised sheep and cattle. They dug turf, peat from the hill as fuel. And gradually they discovered that they could earn a better living lower down the glen where the weather was kinder. And so the population gradually moved east, and the church was left to fall into disrepair after a new church was built down near Invermark Castle in the early 1800s. The community here, going back in time, covered a wide area, and today the kirk town is no more. The weather looks idyllic at the moment, but this was a harsh, harsh life. If you'd like to find out more about the Glen and also Alexander Ross, please look at my longer video about Glenesk Loch Lee and the life of Alexander Ross.